Welcome back, guys, to another video. We have a lot to talk about today, so strap in. This is probably going to be a longer episode, and if you are new here, you enjoy this type of content, you enjoy the video, consider hitting that subscribe button. Let's start off here. We got some more documentations, I guess, that got published, more information that we hadn't seen previously from the Xbox Activision Blizzard acquisition case with the FTC. And it gives us more insight as to the future of Xbox, kind of where Phil Spencer was thinking or what he was thinking when it came to the PlayStation 5 and price raises, as well as the Nintendo Switch 2 apparently already being shown off to Activision last year. And they have an idea kind of what these specs are going to be. So we're going to go over all of that. We'll start off here with this. And this has to do with the next Xbox. It looks like, based off of internal chat logs that were revealed, the next Xbox is targeting a 2028 release date. Now, this isn't surprising. We had already heard stuff about this previously, where that was kind of where Xbox was going. They had mentioned that, I believe, in some other documents while they were in court with the FTC. But this is just kind of more casual, but kind of more specific as well as to where their heads are at in terms of the next generation of consoles. And if you're somebody who likes consoles as I do, and I hope that they don't go away, even though I kind of see a future where there won't be consoles, maybe not next generation, but the generation after, this year is a good sign, I would say, that they're continuing with wanting to create hardware. So this is a report here from Axios, and it says here that the 2028 launch plan was referenced in a May 2022 meeting among more than a dozen senior Microsoft executives attended by CEO Satya Nadella, CFO Amy Hood, and head of gaming Phil Spencer, among others, according to this document. It says, in a brief chat exchange, a non-Xbox executive asked the gaming leadership team whether the next Xbox will veer from the traditional model of consoles having fixed hardware standards that all game makers can develop for. I mean, that's a great question, because you do think about where the ecosystem stuff is going with subscription, with cloud gaming, with Game Pass being literally available on TVs as a smart app where you don't need any extra hardware to be able to play within the Xbox ecosystem. Going forward, there's going to be a lot of questions out there as to whether Xbox wants to continue down the hardware path. But here's exactly what they say. It says, one of the things consoles have been really great at is giving a very clear platform target for developers, and a game development kit has been really good at this. And this was said here by Anuj Gosalia, who is the corporate vice president of immersive experiences. And then it goes on here as well, saying, is the plan for 2028 to keep the something was redacted like model, or force a Windows like flexible capabilities like model? And that's a question right now that, again, a good question to be asked. When you have the Series S, you have the Series X, you see all of the different SKUs for PC, and PC is a part of the Xbox ecosystem. You may think, well, they already have a huge role in PC with Windows. Would they just go ahead and then create something that is more along the lines of PC, where people are going to be upgrading parts, upgrading things here and there to kind of get more power as the generation goes on? I mean, we're already seeing the complaints that people are having with the current hardware. The complaint either that the full power of the Series X hasn't been pulled out of it yet, or that the consoles, the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, are already behind, that we're going to be stuck with 30 frames per second games for the remainder of this generation. But I don't think that will be the case. I think there will still be multiple 60 FPS games coming out. But the response to that question there was, we have already started this journey with the Xbox One and the Xbox One X, furthering it in the Series S and X. And that was a response from Kevin Gamble, who is the corporate vice president of gaming ecosystems. And then there is another response here saying, we need to be even more flexible going forward with Gen 10, but also provide the ability for creators to take advantage of unique hardware capabilities. So that is seemingly what the plan is going to be like going forward. They're going to continue with the at least 2 SKU model of Xbox. They're going to probably have a weaker hardware and then a stronger hardware. And it also has me asking the question, at least, if they want to be more flexible, will they be releasing a pro version this generation? If the next generation is not coming out for another 5 years, 4 or 5 years, in 2028, will they release another more powerful console in 2024, maybe 2025 to push through to the end of the generation, kind of like what they did with the Xbox One X, especially as they do mention they want to be flexible, they want to have multiple SKUs, and they want to keep that open. It kind of makes me start thinking more along the lines that they may consider that in a year or two, especially if the PlayStation 5 does release a PS5 Pro and it is more significantly powerful than the Xbox Series X. I don't see Xbox wanting to really sit far behind in terms of a power perspective when it comes to the Series X, because we do know power is something that they do value and that they were weighing against the PlayStation 5. In fact, we have some more internal documents and emails showing that they were looking at the power of the PS5 and making the comparisons after the PS5 specs were announced. So again, another document here that has been published, and here is what it says. So this was actually emails of Liz Hamren, who was the former head of platform engineering and hardware at Xbox. And Liz was pointing out the weaknesses of the PlayStation 5 specs compared to the Xbox Series X. If we go all the way back to the beginning of this generation, if you remember, the PlayStation 5 announced their specs, and then I believe it was just a couple of days later that Microsoft revealed their specs for the Xbox Series X, although the Series X was first announced essentially at the Game Awards even before that. But it says here, Microsoft was, as you expected, following Sony's reveal of the PlayStation 5 very closely. Sony announced the full PS5 tech specs in March of 2020, which prompted an Xbox executive to provide Xbox chief Phil Spencer and Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella with a summary of Sony's console. Internal emails from the FTC versus Microsoft case reveal this. And then more than 2 years later, Microsoft also reacted to the PlayStation 5 price increase. So we will actually be seeing that as well. So this is what the internal email from Liz Hamren talks about. It says here, Cerny talked at length about the move to SSDs. You remember that presentation with Mark Cerny and the PlayStation 5? They focused all their energy on the SSD. They also focused all their energy on audio, and she kind of goes over that here. She says, and the advantages for game developers and consumers, they have optimized for higher raw throughput, 2 times R, with slightly better hardware compression and associated performance improvements, as opposed to a more integrated streaming architecture enabled by sampler feedback streaming. And she also says here, elsewhere, the 12 teraflops performance versus the Sony teraflops was briefly discussed, saying Cerny emphasized that GPU teraflops and CU is not a good measurement of performance. We made the same point with Digital Foundry, but we do have a clear performance advantage of 12 to 10 teraflops. So although she does mention it's not the good measurement of performance, they are pointing out here that there is a performance advantage from the Xbox Series X to the PlayStation 5. I feel like that wouldn't even be a major focus if it wasn't something that they did care about. And then she also mentions how there was a lot of time spent on the audio section for the PlayStation 5. We remember with their whole audio, 3D spatial audio stuff that they went over in depth, and kind of isn't that revolutionary with everything that is out there. But in the email, she says one of the key messages here was the 3D spatial audio. In fact, even says this, Cerny also spent what seemed like a disproportionate amount of time on audio innovations. And besides that, they also mention the difference in the variable GPU and CPU clock rates of the PS5 compared to the sustained rates of the Xbox, saying versus us running at higher sustain rates, and then admits that Sony has a clear advantage on the SSD performance. So it seems like from what they saw from PlayStation's overall reveal of the specs when they first did it back in 2020 was they had an advantage of the SSD, but essentially everything else, I think Xbox is pretty confident into what they were going to be revealing just a couple of days later. Now, the next thing that was shown off in these emails was how Phil Spencer reacted to the PlayStation 5 price and him buying a PlayStation 5 with Horizon Zero Dawn, or Horizon Forbidden West, I should say, clumped in there, pushed on it as a bundle. You had no choice but to get that game for $50 more. It says in internal emails, Microsoft was also quick to react to Sony PS5's price increase last year, despite not hiking the Xbox prices immediately. And I feel like based off of their reaction here, this is why they didn't raise those prices immediately. And they did eventually later in certain parts of the world after the PS5 had raised their prices. It says here Xbox CFO Tim Stewart emailed Xbox Chief Spencer and Microsoft CFO Amy Hood early in the morning of Sony's announcement in 2022, noting that Xbox team had anticipated this and are moving quickly towards a plan now that we've seen confirmation. And they say there was discussion in the email chain, which is heavily redacted, but it appears that Spencer wants the company to remain gamer focused with any price increase. So if you have any doubts ever about Phil Spencer really wanting to be gamer focused, him being a gamer himself, every time we see stuff come out, it's more and more evident that he really is for the gamer. He wants to make sure Xbox is focused on the gamers themselves and bringing the best gaming content to the platform. I think the Xbox One was just a huge slap in the face in terms of waking them up. They have to be focused on gaming and gamers and nothing else if they really do want to succeed, but or at least that being the main focus, with the other things trickled in there after. Now, Amy Silverman, who was the head of Microsoft's consumer sales and marketing at the time, responded with, all good points. Let's be gamer obsessed here, as we have not gotten out of the woods. We know this could be our time to win fans versus lose being a follower. And that's huge, because this was a time where Xbox was gaining momentum, or getting definitely ready to gain momentum as 2023 was coming upon us. And I'm sure they had a huge outlook on 2023, which they've delivered an awesome year. And they didn't want to be coming out there killing their momentum as people were really starting to take to the platform itself by raising the prices at the wrong time and just following in PlayStation's footsteps. Because when PlayStation raised the prices of the PS5 console, it brought a lot of negative press towards them. Xbox was able to avoid that for a certain amount of time until they actually did raise their prices, but then they raised their prices at a point where people weren't as, I would say, angry at Xbox, and people were more excited about the prospects of the future for the platform, so probably did not hit them as hard. And then Spencer also goes on here and explains that he bought a PS5 in August of 2022 and says Sony has been force bundling Horizon Zero Dawn for $50 additionally for a while now. He's referring to Horizon Forbidden West. That's obviously a mistake by him. He says, I bought my PS5 2 weeks ago, and the only option was the HDD bundle at $549. So recognizing the forced bundling of games for the PlayStation 5, which that has worked for them for increasing their game sales, increasing their overall numbers, because those all play in to the sales of their first party games when they do launch their games. I wonder if Xbox will ever consider going along those lines. I mean, I hope not. I think like you should have more of a choice in the terms of the bundles as you're able to get, or at least in the SKU you're able to get, because with PS5 right now, it is hard to get just the disc drive or just the digital ones, or at least when their first party games drop, you are forced to get that bundle with their first party game for $50 additional. So just some interesting stuff there where they reacted to the specs. They also reacted to the Xbox price increase. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is this, because there is a lot of discussion when it comes to Xbox Game Pass in terms of how much money it makes. Are people paying just the $1 fee for it with the trial? Is that the majority of subscribers, even though that trial is now gone? That was a discussion that a lot of people continuously debated about. Now we have more information that the majority of people are paying full price for their subscriptions, which is a very good outlook for the amount of money Game Pass makes, which means that it is profitable, as Phil Spencer said, and we're going to be getting more and more content coming over to the service as it continues to grow. But here's a article here from Tweaking saying Xbox Game Pass made $230 million in revenue in 1 month, and most users pay for full subscriptions. How is this known? Well, basically, there was a slideshow that was released, and in that slide deck, it showed that Xbox Game Pass generated an average of $9.26 per subscription. And we know there's roughly around 25 million or so Xbox Game Pass subscribers. I would assume it is more than that now, probably significantly more than that, especially as the Xbox Game Pass core numbers are going to be able to funnel in to those subscription numbers. So you take $9.26 as the average, the price that people pay for the subscription. And that means that Game Pass generated around $231.5 million in revenue in the month of April 2022. That number's probably increased as the subscriptions go up. And $9.26 is very close to the cost of the full price of Xbox Game Pass, which at that time was $9.99 a month. And I'm sure now, because of the price increase as well with Game Pass, which was $1 and $2, depending on the subscription you got, the average net revenue to sub value will be higher than $9.26. So that's pretty big. It's pretty big. And when it comes to, they say as of April 2022, Microsoft had 11.7 million Xbox Live Gold subscribers. Take that 11.7 million, you can roughly give or take a million or so that are going to be transferred over, because they're automatically transferred over. Maybe some people will cancel, but transferred over to Xbox Game Pass Core, you add at least another 10 million to these subscriber numbers to Xbox Game Pass that they're going to be reporting going forward next time they release their numbers. There's all this talk about, is it at 30 million now because of the LinkedIn post the other day that we talked about that had the number of 30 million in there. Then they were erased and put 25. I'm thinking they may be waiting until like 40 million or maybe even 50 million before they make an announcement, but maybe 35 million or so once they have figured out what the overall number is for adding an Xbox Game Pass core to it. But Xbox Game Pass on average, $10 per customer, they're making a ton of money. It is going to be continuously growing and continuously a profit maker, I believe, for Xbox. And again, Phil Spencer has reiterated that it is successful. It is making the money. All right, let's jump over to this. So we have some more information, I guess, about the Nintendo Switch. And this comes from the Xbox Activision Blizzard emails and documents that were recently published. We've heard some rumors already about the next Nintendo Switch, and Nintendo Switch 2 seemingly is just around the corner, and we're potentially going to be getting an announcement in 2024, maybe even a release date. But the question with the Nintendo Switch 2 is, where's it going to stack up against the current generation of consoles? A lot of people are expecting it to be closer to the Xbox Series S, but that seemingly is not going to be the case if these emails and these documents and the information has stayed the same since the last time Bobby Kotick was briefed on the Nintendo Switch 2. So again, this is an internal email from the FTC versus Microsoft case that has recently been published. And this is an email chain that includes Chris Schachtenberg, who is the head of Activision's platform strategy and partner relations. And he prepared a summary of the Nintendo Switch NG standing for next generation. And basically, when it comes to the power of the next Nintendo Switch, they say here, given the closer alignment to Gen 8 platforms in terms of performance and our previous offerings on PS4 and Xbox One, it is reasonable to assume we can make something compelling for the NG Switch as well. It would be helpful to secure early access to development hardware prototypes and prove that out nice and early. And this information, they say here, was sent to Bobby Kotick ahead of a December 15th meeting he had with the Nintendo CEO and president Shintaro Furukawa. So, I mean, take that for what you will. This could change. This is just something that they are seeing now that they talked about back in 2022. But things do change between the 2 years before the release to the actual release of a platform. Maybe they've increased these specs a little bit, but it being on par with the PS4 and the Xbox One, it kind of does make sense that they would probably push for that amount of power, which is obviously very underpowered to anything out there currently in terms of console and in terms of PC. But it is Nintendo. It is the Nintendo Switch. They're not going for a power narrative. They can be far behind in terms of power and still be the market leader in terms of console sales, as we have seen with the current Nintendo Switch out there that is still going very strong. So we'll see what happens there in terms of the power thing. I think more importantly is going to be the screen and if they have an SSD in there, the load times, the storage, and just kind of how they improve their overall platform with online, and hopefully get rid of friend codes and just making a more seamless experience and continue to build out their Nintendo Switch online. But one of the other things here is that we know Call of Duty is coming over to the Nintendo Switch, and they could absolutely put the Call of Duties on a console that has PS4 or Xbox One specs. Is like they say, they've put games on those specs and done very, very well. It will be a lesser version of the Call of Duty games that do come out, but they will still be able to run those games on a next generation Switch that has something closer to PS4 or Xbox One. But we also don't know if this means slightly more powerful, slightly less powerful, or right on par with the Gen 8 offerings. And finally, let's talk about this because Starfield continues to be massive and it is setting more numbers that are very exciting, I think, for Bethesda and for Xbox in terms of what they can do from a first party perspective. And we have information here that Starfield is the 5th biggest game to launch in Europe this year. And that's so far. I mean, this thing continues to climb and it probably will continue to climb the ranks. It actually surpassed Forza Horizon 5 as Xbox's biggest launch this generation across Europe. So the Starfield was comfortably number 1 across Europe during its launch week, GSD data shows. And the Xbox game, which is also on PC, became the fastest selling new IP of the year and the 5th fastest selling game of the year overall. Its launch sales are ahead of Final Fantasy 16 and Resident Evil 4, but behind Hogwarts Legacy and Diablo 4. I mean, Diablo 4 in the future can be another first-party Xbox game. Also behind The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom and Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Now, they do mention this, that the data isn't quite like for like, as Starfield was technically available a week earlier for those who did purchase the premium edition. So you can add a few extra days to the sales to what they are getting here. So this is the Europe GSD top 10 digital plus physical sales week ending September 10th. And of course, the premium stuff came out September 1st. So there will be even more than what they are showing here. And again, 5th on the list, or number 1 on the list, but 5th biggest Xbox launch of the generation across Europe. So Starfield continues to do extremely well. Not surprising. It's been an absolutely successful launch, even with all the FUD people were trying to throw at this game before it was releasing with the marketing and it was going to be this big buggy mess and all this type of stuff. They have really proven a lot of people wrong. But I'm going to leave the video there, guys. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up. If you are new here, hit that subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.